In my past life I gave everything to my daughter, only for her to betray me and side with the woman who destroyed our family. I died broken, forgotten. But fate gave me a second chance. This time I walked away first. I gave up custody, adopted a little girl the world rejected. And when they came crawling back years later, I wasn't their mother anymore. I was the woman they could never break again. I don't want a kid like her anyway. She's hard to love. The moment the words left my mouth, the entire room went still. Michael froze mid-step and Isla's little fingers tightened around the hem of his shirt like she'd just touched fire. Her mouth opened slightly as if my words had physically knocked the breath out of her. For a heartbeat, no one said anything, just silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Then Isla let out a strangled sob. "Bad mommy," she screamed. "Bad mommy. I hate you." She thrashed wildly in Michael's arms, tiny fists flailing, tears streaking down her cheeks like rain on glass. Her nose was running, and her face contorted into something between heartbreak and fury. Michael clutched her tightly, struggling to calm her down. "Sweetheart, mommy didn't mean that," he said quickly, glaring at me over Isla's head. "She's just tired. She didn't mean it, baby. She loves you the most, remember?" I stood still. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't even breathe. Isla's sobbing hiccuped to a whimper under his words. She peeked at me from over his shoulder, snot dripping down her upper lip. "Really?" she whispered. Michael nodded. "Of course it's true. If you don't believe me, mommy will tell you herself." He turned his eyes toward me, pleading, almost begging. I still didn't move. Isla turned her entire body to face me, leaning over his shoulder, eyes filled with trembling hope. She waited. I let her wait. My arms stayed limp at my sides. My face remained unreadable. My heart, quiet, pulled. The light in her eyes dimmed. She clung tighter to Michael's neck, recoiling from me like I had become something monstrous. "You said you loved me," she mumbled, choking on another sob. I still said nothing. She flinched like I had slapped her. Michael's face hardened. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped. "You want to divorce me, fine. But now you don't even want your own daughter? Do you even deserve to be called a mother?" My lips curved into a slow, mocking smile. "She's the one who said she didn't want me to be her mother," I said calmly. "I'm just honoring her wishes." Isla froze. Then suddenly she pushed away from Michael's chest and glared at me with fiery indignation. "You're the one who didn't want me or Daddy first," she shouted. "You said you were leaving. You said you were getting divorced." She was trembling with emotion. Her cheeks were flushed and her small chest rose and fell with each heavy breath. "If you really cared what I wanted, why don't you listen?" Her voice cracked like thunder. "I don't want you to get divorced. That's what I want the most. But you don't care, you just want to leave." "And what would that make me, huh?" she cried. "A kid with no mom and no dad?" There was the guilt, the manipulation, the exact words she had used in my last life. The memory hit me like a blade to the ribs. In that other life I had crouched beside her, stroked her hair and explained everything so patiently. I'd told her her father had betrayed me. That I didn't want her to grow up in a home with lies. I hoped she'd understand. Instead she'd looked me in the eyes and asked, "Is it because you weren't good enough that Daddy found someone else?" I'd never forgotten those words. That day, I had cried alone in the stairwell after putting her to sleep. And in the years that followed I kept sacrificing, kept bending, kept hoping that one day she would see me as her mother again. But that day never came. "You don't understand anything, Isla," I said, my voice low and razor sharp. "You think you want us together. But what you really want is your father's illusion. The picture-perfect lie." Her chin trembled. "That's not true." "It is," I said flatly. Michael stepped forward, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Ava, enough." I ignored him. "You know what hurts the most?" I looked directly at Isla. "It's not that you sided with your dad. It's not even that you're blind to what he's done. It's that after everything I did for you, you still think I'm the problem. You said," Isla began, but her voice faltered. "You said I wasn't good enough," I interrupted. "You told me I wasn't pretty. That Daddy didn't want me. And you didn't either." Her eyes widened as she remembered. That time in the car. That awful day after school. When I picked her up late because I'd been at the hospital checking on my father's tests. She was only 9 then. And yet her words had landed like punches. Kept going. You said Emily's mom was prettier. That her parents stayed together because she was good and smart. You said I wasn't. Tears streamed down her face again, but I didn't stop. You know what I did after that? My voice cracked. I worked harder. I cooked your favorite meals. I bought you better clothes. I stayed up at night sewing your costume for that school play. I drove you to lessons, to practice, to school meetings. I loved you so much it hurt. My voice broke now just for a second. And what did I get in return? Her lips parted. Nothing, I answered for her. You forgot me on your wedding day. You invited her, Vanessa. You called her mom on stage in front of hundreds of people. And then you let Michael thank her for saving him from a failed marriage. My throat burned. I watched my own daughter hand the man who cheated on me to the woman who helped him do it. Michael's face darkened. Don't bring that up now. Why not? I snapped. You weren't ashamed then. Why should I be ashamed now? I looked down at Isla. Her small hands were trembling. She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. The silence stretched. Do you still not agree to the divorce? I asked coldly. Even knowing what he did. Are you still going to stay by his side? She hesitated. Michael gently touched her shoulder, whispering something into her ear. The same manipulation. The same pressure. Isla's face tightened. She nodded. Yes. My smile was bitter now. Of course. A perfect daughter for a perfect man. I turned toward the hallway and picked up my purse. I'm leaving. Michael stepped forward. Where the hell are you going? Out. You can't just. Watch me. I didn't look back. Outside the wind was cold. It whipped against my face like a challenge, but I welcomed it. I stood on the front steps of the seaside bay villa we had once bought together, Michael and I, and for the first time I saw it for what it was. A cage. I got in my car and drove off into the night. When I reached my apartment near the office, my phone rang. I didn't need to check the screen. It was my mother. How did it go? She asked the moment I picked up. Did he sign the papers? No. There was a pause. Isla. She doesn't want the divorce either. A longer pause now. Then, don't tell me you're going to hand over the company again just to win her back. I swallowed hard. No. I'm not making that mistake again. She let out a sigh. Part relief, part sadness. I never hated her, Ava. But that child, she's Michael's daughter to the core. She's not going to change. I know. Her voice softened. I'm proud of you, you know. I closed my eyes. Then stay proud, I said quietly. Because next time I walk into that lawyer's office, I'm taking everything. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but I was already wide awake, standing in the dim light of my home office, flipping through my old divorce papers. Thick, cream-colored legal folders. Handwritten notes scribbled in the margins. And a custody agreement that I had once clung to like a lifeline. I had bled for that document in my last life, given away assets, land, even the majority stake in Heart Interiors, just to hold on to Isla. And for what? So she could grow up calling another woman mom? So she could spit on me in court and accuse me of being the reason her father left? I picked up the pen, drew a thick line through the old clause about joint custody, and scrawled something new beside it. Custody, waived. This time I wouldn't be the one groveling. Later that morning I met Mr. Lang at his downtown office. His assistant gave me a side glance as I walked in, probably expecting me to show up red-eyed and devastated like the last time. But I wasn't that Ava anymore. I wore a sharp black blazer. No makeup. No tears. Miss Hart, Mr. Lang greeted, rising from behind his desk. I received your message. It sounded urgent. It is, I replied, sliding the old agreement toward him. He flipped through the pages. You want to avoid the initial divorce agreement? Yes. He paused. I understand wanting to renegotiate the asset division, but are you absolutely sure about this? His eyes flicked to the custody clause I'd amended in thick black ink. About giving up your daughter? She made her choice, I said coldly. I'm simply honoring it. The pen hovered in my hand for a long moment before I signed the bottom of the new draft. With each stroke of ink I felt something old and heavy fall away. Something that had kept me shackled for years. An illusion of motherhood based on guilt, obligation, and a desperate need for love that was never mine to begin with. Now, I said, straightening, I need you to include a clause for full financial restitution. I want the Bennett family, I caught myself, I mean the Carters, to reimburse all expenses drawn from my personal and corporate accounts over the past 10 years. That includes gifts, tuition, vehicles, vacations. I want records pulled. Mr. Lang blinked. That's a lot. I know. I want it all itemized. If he wants a war, I'll give him one. That night, as I poured myself a glass of wine, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, habit maybe, forced my thumb to swipe right. Please tell me you didn't back down, she said the moment I picked up. I exhaled slowly. I didn't. Silence. Then a soft chuckle. About time. She didn't need to say more. She had been warning me for years. First about Michael. Then about Isla. And in my previous life I'd ignored every word. When I gave up half the company to maintain custody, she'd stormed into my house and screamed, "Do you want your father's empire to end up in the hands of the woman who destroyed your marriage? Because that's what's going to happen." I thought she was being dramatic. She wasn't. She had been right all along. "I'm not giving Isla anything this time," I said quietly. "No money. No house. No half-hearted affection." "So what now?" she asked. "No." I looked at the empty bedroom down the hall. The one that used to be Isla's. Now I start over. 2 days later, I found myself driving 3 hours out of town, past the glossy suburbs and empty farmland, until I reached a quiet place tucked behind a hill, Willow Grove Center. I hadn't been there in years. Back then, it had been part of a charity initiative I led. We donated books, built a new roof. I remembered the director, Miss Powell, a kind, no-nonsense woman with silver hair and a commanding voice. When she opened the front gate and saw me, her eyebrows shot up. "Miss Hart." "Hello again," I said, forcing a smile. "Do you remember me?" "Of course. You helped renovate our library. What brings you here today?" "I'm looking for someone." She led me into a sunlit room where children were playing with puzzles. Their laughter filled the space like music. It hurt a little, only because I couldn't remember the last time Isla had laughed near me like that. "I'm looking for a girl named Sophie Lane," I said. "I sponsored her a few years ago." Miss Powell's eyes brightened. "Sophie, yes, I know her well. She's a little star. Top grades, gentle temperament. She's not here right now, though. She's at a regional math competition in the next province." "But..." She stood and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a dusty album. She opened it and flipped to a worn photo. "There," she said. "That's her." My breath caught. Sophie couldn't have been older than 8 in the photo. Her hair was unevenly cut, and her sneakers looked too big for her feet. But her eyes, bright, curious, full of quiet fire, stared directly at the camera. "She told me once that someone named Ava Hart wrote her a letter," Miss Powell said. "Said it changed her life. She keeps it in her drawer." My fingers gently traced the photo's edge. My throat tightened. In my last life, Sophie Lane had been the only person who stayed by my side during my final days. When I was bedridden with cancer, when I had nothing, no family, no company, no friends, it was this girl who read to me, washed my hair, whispered stories to distract me from the pain. She used to say, "You saved my childhood. Let me save your ending." Tears blurred my vision. And now, by some twist of fate, I had the chance to save her beginning. "I want to adopt her," I said softly. Miss Powell blinked. "You're serious?" "Yes." Her eyes welled up. "That would make her so happy. She deserves that kind of love." The ride back felt like something in my soul had realigned. I wasn't just cutting ties, I was choosing new ones. I stopped by a shopping mall on the way home, heading straight for the children's section. I had asked Ms. Powell for Sophie's clothing sizes. The girl was small, underfed from years of scrimping and going without. But that would end. I filled bag after bag. Dresses, shoes, backpacks. Notebooks. Pencils. A matching water bottle set with glitter floating inside. And then, in a boutique tucked behind the escalator, I saw it. A glass display case. A single limited edition crystal pony figurine. The same one Isla had cried for months ago when it was sold out. It was expensive. Ridiculously so. I didn't hesitate. I bought it. Not because I wanted to hurt Isla, but because I wanted to give Sophie everything she had never dared to dream of. As I stepped out of the boutique with shopping bags in both hands, the universe decided to laugh. There At the end of the corridor was Michael, holding Isla's hand. And beside them, clinging to his arm in her perfect pastel blouse, was Vanessa Liu. Picture perfect. Like a happy little family. All three of them stopped when they saw me. Isla's eyes widened. Vanessa's expression twitched. Michael's brows lifted, surprised, and was that embarrassment? I didn't stop. Didn't slow down. I walked right past them without blinking. But of course Michael had to open his mouth. Ava, he called, jogging a few steps to catch up. Wait, hold on. I stopped only because I wanted to see what lie he'd tell this time. Isla's been missing you, he said. She cried last week. Kept asking why you didn't come pick her up. Did she now? I said dryly. I glanced at Isla. She looked down quickly, cheeks flushed. She hadn't seen me in days, not since I told her she was hard to love. Now she hid behind Vanessa like I was a ghost. She missed you, Michael repeated, trying to soften his voice. Funny, I said, adjusting my grip on the shopping bags. Because from where I'm standing she looks just fine. He faltered. Well, kids get upset. You know how she is. I said nothing. His eyes dropped to the bags in my hands. You bought her something, didn't you? Then turning to Isla he smiled. See, sweetie? Mommy brought you a gift. Come say thank you. Isla's face lit up. She took one step forward. Then I said it. These aren't for her. The smile slid right off Michael's face. What? They're not for Isla, I repeated. Isla froze. Confusion flickered across her face. What do you mean, not for me? She whispered. I stared at her. This girl I had once loved more than life itself. I meant what I said, Isla. I don't want a child who only knows how to hurt. You chose your father. You chose her. I looked at Vanessa, who was now glaring. These are for someone else. Someone who never asked to be loved, but deserved it anyway. The mall's cold air conditioning felt strangely warm against the coldness blooming in my chest. Michael's face had gone slack. Isla's smile vanished, replaced by a deep confusion that bordered on betrayal. You're joking, she whispered, stepping closer. Her eyes flicked to the crystal pony box poking out of one of the bags. That's the one I wanted. I know, I said evenly. And it's not for you. Her eyes welled with tears. She took another step toward me, her voice now rising in pitch. Even if you bought me a gift, I won't forgive you unless you promise not to divorce Dad. And you have to apologize to both of us. I scoffed. Apologize? Her chin lifted, face small but arrogant. You said mean things. You told me I was hard to love. You hurt my feelings. My voice turned razor sharp. And you've been using that line to manipulate everyone since. Michael cut in sharply, brows creased. Ava, that's enough. What's the point of this? You've made your statement. You're pissed. We get it. But don't drag a child into your tantrum. I looked at the two of them, my ex-husband, polished and dismissive, and my daughter, who'd once been my entire world and now couldn't even see the line she'd crossed. And I realized, there was no tantrum here. Only truth. I told you, I said, each word measured, these bags are not for Isla. She isn't the only child in this world. Michael's gaze dropped to the boutique bag with the crystal pony logo. His frown deepened. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. That thing costs a fortune. Not that money was ever your problem, I snapped. Spending mine anyway. He narrowed his eyes. Then who are they for? I let the silence answer him. A tense beat passed. Then from behind Michael came a familiar voice. Ava. If Lily's mother made a mistake, shouldn't she apologize? Vanessa Liu cooed, stepping forward like she was rehearsing for a soap opera. Children are forgiving if you're honest. There's no need to lie. I looked her over. Flawless skin, curled hair, pastel blouse. She looked like every man's fantasy of redemption, the woman who rescues them from the evil wife. Vanessa gently stroked Lily's back. Don't worry, sweetheart. It's just a misunderstanding. If Auntie Lou could, she'd buy you a new pony right now. Isla sniffled. Really? Of course, darling. The nerve. This woman had stolen my husband, raised my daughter like her own, and now stood here pretending to play the hero with my child. My child who spat me out the second something better came along. I chuckled coldly. Do you even know what this figurine is? Vanessa blinked. What? That pony, I said, pointing to the box. is a limited edition from an Italian glass designer. You can't even buy it without a minimum spend of 8 figures at their store. She faltered. I bought it using my VIP privileges. Something you don't have access to. Something none of you do. Vanessa's mouth twisted. You're being petty. I shrugged. And you're being delusional. At that, I turned and walked away. The mall's floor-to-ceiling glass doors swung open as I pushed through them, the sunlight blinding, the weight of the bags cutting into my palms. Behind me, I could hear Isla's whimpering voice rise in pitch again. But I want the pony. Michael's voice was taut. Let it go, Lily. We'll buy you something else. But she got my pony, she screamed. An hour later, I received a call from the boutique. Miss Hart, the sales associate said sweetly, a Mr. Michael Carter and a Miss Vanessa Liu came in just now. They were attempting to purchase another crystal pony using your VIP privileges. I smirked. They don't have my card. They insisted they were family. Since you just bought one recently, I wanted to confirm before allowing it. You have excellent instincts, I said. Don't allow it. And from now on, if anyone attempts to use my account, deny it. Permanently. Understood. I ended the call and smiled as I imagined their faces. Let them sulk. Let them rage. I was done offering kindness to people who used it as currency. 3 days later, I received another call, this time from Ms. Powell at Willow Grove. She's back, she said, her voice warm. Sophie returned from the competition this morning. We'd love for you to visit if you're still serious. I didn't hesitate. I drove out that afternoon, a car full of gifts and a heart full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The moment I stepped onto the grounds of Willow Grove again, the wind seemed softer, the air easier to breathe. I carried the bags to the director's office, and Miss Powell clapped her hands when she saw them. You really didn't hold back, did you? She deserves it. The children were called in one by one to receive small gifts, stickers, dolls, pencil sets. And at the very end of the line stood a small girl in a faded school uniform, her hair tied back with a rubber band, her sneakers frayed. She was looking at me. Not wide-eyed and hopeful like Isla once did, but cautious, quiet, guarded. Her hands hung by her sides. I smiled. She didn't move. Miss Powell gave her a gentle nudge. Slowly, Sophie Lane walked forward. The table was already empty. The other children had taken everything. Her eyes flickered, trying not to show disappointment. I turned and walked to the car. When I returned, I carried a new backpack. Inside, notebooks, pens, glitter pencils, math prep books, a pair of clean sneakers, and, tucked in a side pocket, the crystal pony. She blinked when she saw it. Her little fingers trembled as she ran them over the backpack's embroidery. These are for me, she whispered. Yes, I said. You love math, right? I heard you're good at competitions. She nodded quickly. Well, I said, kneeling to her level, I want to make sure you have everything you need. I know what it feels like to grow up wanting things no one gave you. Her eyes slowly widened. Tears welled up, but she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded once more and whispered, Thank you. I love them. In that moment, I knew. I had made the right choice. That evening, before I left, Miss Powell took me aside to begin the paperwork. You're sure about this? I looked over at Sophie, who was trying to unzip the backpack without tearing the stitching, her movements careful, reverent. Yes, I said. This time, I want to be a mother to someone who actually wants me. Back at home, I turned Isla's old room into something new. I painted the walls soft blue. Replaced the princess stickers with framed art prints. Left the bookshelf intact but added new titles. Science fiction, logic puzzles, math competitions. I even kept the nightlight. Just in case. When it was done, I stood in the doorway and realized I wasn't grieving anymore. I was preparing. 2 days later, the paperwork was approved. When I arrived at Willow Grove for the final visit, Sophie ran up to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. She didn't say anything at first. Then she looked up, voice small but certain. Can I call you Mom now? I bent down, touched her cheek and smiled. You always could. I never thought silence could be this peaceful. Not the kind that lingers after a fight. Not the tight, sharp quiet that comes after someone says something they can't take back. This was a soft silence. Sophie sat at the coffee table in my office, knees tucked under her, brows furrowed in focus as she scribbled away in a practice math workbook. I typed quietly at my laptop, glancing at her every so often. Every time I did, I caught her doing something that made my heart ache in the most beautiful way. Like the way she pressed her lips together when she thought hard. Or how she'd twirl her pencil absent-mindedly when she got stuck. Or the way she'd sneak peeks at me and smile if she caught me watching her. This was what motherhood was supposed to feel like. Not performance, not pleading, not walking on eggshells. Just presence. Simple, sacred presence. After the adoption was finalized, I brought Sophie home to the apartment near my office. I converted the study into a soft blue bedroom, filled the shelves with educational toys, classic novels, and a plush alpaca she named Newton. When she first stepped in, she froze in the doorway, eyes wide like she'd entered a dream. "You mean, this is mine?" she whispered. "Yes," I said gently. "This is yours. Everything here is yours." She turned slowly, looked around the room, and then threw her arms around me, sobbing into my sweater. "Thank you, Mom." That was the first time she called me that without hesitation. It shattered something in me, in the best possible way. For the next several weeks we were inseparable. I brought her with me to the office every day. While I reviewed contracts and responded to emails, she quietly worked on her math problems beside me, occasionally showing me her solutions with that hopeful twinkle in her eyes. I never had to yell. Never had to beg for respect. She listened. She smiled. She leaned into my presence like she'd been waiting for it her whole life. And I realized, I had been waiting for her too. One afternoon she reached across the table and gently touched my hand. "Can I ask you something?" I looked up from my screen. "Of course. Were you always this kind?" Her question caught me off guard. I don't know," I said truthfully. "I tried to be." She was quiet for a while, then nodded. "You're the first person who ever made me feel like I mattered." I didn't say anything. Just pulled her into my lap and let her rest her head on my shoulder. If not for Michael's call, I might have forgotten he existed entirely. It came on a rainy Wednesday morning. My phone buzzed as I was helping Sophie braid her hair before school. I almost let it ring out, but curiosity won. I answered, putting it on speaker. "What now?" I said dryly. Michael's voice burst through the speaker, furious. "Zoe, what the hell is wrong with you?" But there was. "You changed the VIP access, didn't you?" he barked. "You told that store to block us." I smirked. "Of course I did. You thought you could keep leeching off me after the divorce. You humiliated us in public." I brushed a lock of Sophie's hair behind her ear, calm as a breeze. "No, Michael. You humiliated yourselves by thinking I'd still play along." His voice crackled with rage. "You're trying to tear this family apart." I cut him off. "What family?" There was silence. In the background I could hear Isla crying. Then Vanessa's voice, sweet but shrill, "Just give her what she wants. You're a man. Why are you letting her walk all over you?" Then a sharper voice, Michael's mother. "You cold-hearted witch. You'll die alone, you hear me? You gave up your own daughter. God will punish you." I didn't flinch. This was familiar. The Carters had always had loud mouths and empty hands. I let the phone rest on the table as I finished tying Sophie's braid with a small velvet bow. Then, as the insults spilled on, I picked the phone back up and said flatly, "Did you even read the new divorce agreement?" They fell quiet. I could practically hear the papers flipping on the other end. Then came the moment I was waiting for. A sharp gasp. A choked cough. "You gave up custody?" Michael's voice cracked. "Yes. Why would you? How could you agree to that?" I smiled. "Isn't that what you wanted? She's your daughter. And she chose you. And Vanessa. And the life you built out of lies. I won't fight for someone who treats my love like a weapon." More silence. Then Michael's mother again, low and vicious. What kind of mother gives up her own child? There was a shuffling sound, and then Isla's voice broke through, watery and frightened. "And Mom doesn't want me?" Then I heard a slap. "She said she doesn't want you. Stop crying." My jaw tightened. Sophie looked up at me, puzzled. I muted the call before she could hear more. After Sophie left for school, I took a moment to breathe. I had been so sure I would feel guilt. Regret. Something heavy and dark. But instead all I felt was clarity. Letting Isla go wasn't about revenge. It was about peace. 2 days later, Sophie came home from school unusually quiet. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitated. There's a girl in the class below me. Her name's Isla. My blood ran cold. She told everyone I stole her crystal pony. Of course she did. She said orphans like me don't have moms who buy them gifts. She said I probably faked the adoption to get toys. I crouched down to meet Sophie's eyes. And what did you say? I told her I do have a mom. You. Tears threatened the back of my eyes. I swallowed hard. I'm proud of you, I whispered. You did nothing wrong. But inside I was furious. Isla was trying to drag Sophie down because she couldn't stand being replaced. She wanted to punish me through her. I would not let that happen. The next morning I got a call from Sophie's teacher. Apparently, Isla had escalated things, accusing Sophie of stealing her lunch, spreading rumors and cornering her near the lockers. Enough was enough. I arrived at the school that afternoon. When I stepped into the front office, I was greeted by raised voices. You're just a nobody. Isla was yelling. No one loves you. You'll never have a real family. Sophie's voice trembled. That's not true. It is. My dad says she's a liar. He abandoned me. She just picked you up like a stray cat. That was it. I opened the door. Two heads snapped toward me. Mom, they both shouted at the same time. But only one voice made my heart race with warmth. Sophie ran to me, clutching my hand tightly. I pulled her close. I'm Sophie Lane's mother, I said to the teacher who stood frozen. And I believe there's been a serious case of harassment. Isla's face went pale. You're not her mom, she screamed. I'm your daughter. Not her. My expression turned glacial. No, I said. You are my daughter. Past tense. You don't mean that, she sobbed. You said you loved me. And I did, I said softly. Even when you hurt me. Even when you forgot me. I loved you so much it nearly destroyed me. Then why are you choosing her? I turned to Sophie, who looked up at me with trust and quiet strength. Because she chose me back. The school's administrative office was so quiet you could hear Isla's shaky breath echo off the walls. She stood frozen a few feet away, her small hands balled into fists at her sides, her face flushed red with disbelief, fear and fury. She couldn't believe what I had just said. You were my daughter, I had told her. Past tense. And in her world, where everything revolved around manipulation, charm and entitlement, she had never imagined that I would stop playing along. The teacher, Ms. Carlyle, was still trying to piece together what just happened. I wasn't aware this was a family matter, she stammered, eyes flicking between Isla and Sophie. This isn't a family matter, I said coolly, placing a hand on Sophie's shoulder. This is bullying. Sophie didn't speak. She just clung to my coat, her tiny body tense, trembling. She called me a stray, Sophie whispered. She said you only adopted me because no one else wanted me. Miss Carlyle's mouth fell open. Isla Carter, did you say that? Isla didn't deny it. She turned to me, voice sharp with betrayal. Why are you doing this to me? To you. My voice cracked with disgust. You humiliated another child. You made her feel unloved, unwanted. Do you know what that kind of cruelty does to someone? She's not even your real daughter. Neither are you, I snapped, and Isla's lips trembled as if I'd struck her. Sophie flinched. I softened immediately and crouched down beside her. Look at me, I said gently. She raised her head slowly. You're my daughter. By law. By heart. And nothing anyone says changes that. Do you hear me? She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Then I stood up and turned to Ms. Carlyle. I want a formal apology. Not just from Isla. From the school. The school, the teacher blinked. This child was harassed multiple times before I was even contacted. Do you think because Sophie's adopted she doesn't have anyone to stand up for her? I want Isla to apologize publicly, during Monday's assembly. In front of the entire school. Isla gasped. No. That's so embarrassing. Good, I said coldly. Maybe now you'll remember what embarrassment feels like. The following Monday I stood at the back of the courtyard as students lined up under the flagpole. Sophie stood beside me in her freshly ironed school uniform, holding my hand tightly. Isla stood on stage with the principal, arms folded, a microphone shaking in her grip. She was visibly miserable, her face blotchy, her voice thick. I'm sorry, she mumbled. To Sophie. I said things I shouldn't have. The students whispered to each other behind their hands. The teachers watched with mixed expressions, some stunned, some satisfied. I didn't move. Sophie watched, unsure, glancing up at me as if to check whether this made her a bad person. I gave her hand a gentle squeeze. You did nothing wrong, I whispered. After the apology, Isla ran straight to the parking lot, tears streaking down her cheeks. I didn't go after her. Not anymore. That evening I received a call from Michael. I should have ignored it. I answered anyway. What the hell is wrong with you? He barked the second I picked up. You humiliated our daughter in front of the whole school. She humiliated someone else first, I replied calmly. She's a kid. And Sophie is what? A punching bag. His breath came fast and angry. You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to ruin her life just to get back at us. I already ruined my own life once trying to protect her, I snapped. I'm not doing it again. There was a long pause. Then, she cried for 2 hours after that assembly. She should have thought about that before she opened her mouth. His voice dropped low and dangerous. You think Sophie's going to replace her? That little orphan is not your daughter. Blood is blood, Ava. No, Michael. Blood is biology. Love is choice. I ended the call. Days passed. Then weeks. Life with Sophie felt natural, like something I was always meant to experience. We fell into a rhythm. Morning routines, office days, homework after dinner, movie nights with popcorn and fuzzy blankets. She called me mom like she'd always known how. She slipped notes into my purse that said, "You're my sunshine." She told her teacher she wanted to grow up and be just like her mom, a boss lady. And when I tucked her into bed at night, she'd whisper, "Thank you for choosing me." She had no idea that it was really the other way around. Meanwhile, the Carters crumbled. Word spread that I had blocked all Michael's access to our joint accounts. Lu Wen's attempts to use my name for shopping sprees failed one after another. Michael's company, once held up by my quiet behind-the-scenes work, began to lose clients. Nisla. She started showing up to school in rumpled clothes. Her hair wasn't brushed. She looked smaller every time I saw her. Then came the day everything imploded. I received a call from Sophie's school again. This time not from the office but from the principal directly. "There's been an incident," he said grimly. When I arrived, Sophie was sitting outside the nurse's office with a small scrape on her arm and a tear in her shirt. "What happened?" I demanded. She looked up, eyes wide. Isla cornered me behind the gym. She said if I didn't leave the school, she'd make sure I couldn't walk home safely. My blood boiled. I stormed into the principal's office. Isla sat inside, eyes red, shoulders hunched. Her homeroom teacher sat beside her, looking awkward and tired. "This is escalating," the principal said carefully. "We're considering a temporary suspension." "Not enough," I said coldly. "She physically threatened my daughter. I want her removed from the school permanently." Isla's head shot up. "You can't do that. This is my school." I stared her down. "You lost the right to say, the moment you decided hurting someone was easier than accepting reality. She took you from me." Isla sobbed. "You were my mom." "No," I said, voice quiet but firm. "I was your convenience. Until I wasn't." That night, Sophie crawled into bed beside me. She held my hand and whispered, "I don't want to go to a new school. I like it here. Even if Isla's mean sometimes." I turned to her, brushing hair from her face. "You're not going anywhere. But won't her parents make you take her back?" I smiled sadly. "They don't get to make decisions about me anymore. And neither do you." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "You are my daughter, Sophie. You are enough. You're not a replacement. You're not second best. You're the child I chose. And I would choose you 1,000 times over." Her lips trembled. "Even if I make mistakes sometimes?" "Especially then." She nodded slowly. Then leaned into me. And for the first time in my life I felt what it was like to be chosen back. The divorce certificate arrived on a Monday. Plain envelope. No frills. Just a folded sheaf of paper and the metallic press of finality at the bottom. I stared at it for a long time before I signed. Not because I hesitated. Not because I regretted. But because it meant everything I had endured, all the silence, the sacrifices, the betrayal, was finally being buried. For good. And I was ready to dance at the funeral. I brought Sophie with me to the lawyer's office for the final signature. It felt symbolic. She deserved to see this chapter end. To see how a woman writes her own ending, not in tears but with ink and steel. We arrived early. The Carters were already there. Michael sat in his wrinkled button-down shirt, pretending to look relaxed, but the dark circles under his eyes gave him away. Vanessa Lou was nowhere to be seen. Isla sat next to him, hair in messy pigtails, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. The sight of her, so small, so ragged compared to the polished girl she once was, might have broken my heart once. But not anymore. She made her bed. She would lie in it. And I had learned to sleep peacefully elsewhere. When Sophie and I walked in, every pair of eyes in the room went straight to her. Michael's face twisted. "Oh, so that's the reason you didn't want custody." I didn't even flinch. "Watch your mouth." He let out a bitter laugh. "Bringing your bastard child to the signing? Classy Ava." Sophie flinched, stepping closer to me. I narrowed my eyes. "Say another word about her, Michael, and I'll release every shred of your dirty laundry to the press. You think your company can handle that right now?" He clenched his jaw. The veins in his temple pulsed. I turned to our lawyer, Mr. Lang. "Are we ready?" He nodded, sliding the file across the table. "Sign here. And here. Initial this page. And then, it's done." Michael was already sweating. His hand trembled as he signed. I signed with ease. The pen glided across the paper like a final brushstroke on a masterpiece. Mr. Lang took the papers back, sealed them in a folder and nodded once. "Divorce finalized." Just like that. We stood. Sophie tugged at my sleeve, her voice a whisper. "Can we go now?" "Soon," I said. "One last thing." I turned to face the woman who used to call me Mommy. Isla looked up at me with something close to desperation. Her bottom lip trembled. "Can I come with you?" she asked. The room froze. Michael looked startled. "Lily." "I want to go with Mom," she said louder, panic rising in her tone. "I don't want to stay with you anymore." Sophie's hand slipped into mine. I stayed silent. Isla rushed toward me. "I'll be good. I won't talk to Aunt Vanessa anymore. I promise I'll try harder, just please let me come with you." I gently pulled my hand away from hers. "No." Her eyes widened. "No," she whispered. "But I'm your daughter." "You were," I said softly. Behind her, Michael stiffened. Isla burst into sobs. "Please. I'll do better. I don't want to be left behind." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply turned around, took Sophie's hand and walked out the door. Behind me, I could hear Isla's scream echo through the hallway. Michael didn't stop her. Because he couldn't. He was just as lost as she was. Outside, the sun was shining brightly. Sophie looked up at me. "You okay?" I smiled. "More than okay." That evening, Mr. Lang sent over photos and timestamps of Michael's public behavior post-divorce. Him flaunting Vanessa at business parties, moving her into our villa before the split was even finalized. All the proof I needed to ensure he got nothing. And more importantly, to wipe my name off his future completely. I filed them away and felt no remorse. By the following week, the Carters had been removed from the Seaside Bay villa. I had hired private security to ensure it. According to the staff, Michael had begged for a few more days, citing a lack of help and unforeseen difficulties. I didn't grant them. They'd lived in that house for years. Off my income, my name, my pain. They could survive without silk sheets and a private chef for once. When the final footage from the security system came in, I watched it without blinking. Vanessa's cheap suitcase burst open halfway down the driveway. Michael's shirt was stained. Isla tripped over a flower pot and started crying. I watched them leave my home, disheveled, hollow, broken. It felt like watching a disease be cut from a body. They landed back in Michael's mother's crumbling townhouse. Without maids or nannies, Isla's hair remained unbrushed for days. Vanessa, no longer playing perfect mistress, started snapping at her like she was just another inconvenience. Michael posted nothing on social media for weeks. No birthday celebrations. No fancy dinners. No happy family captions. Just silence. Meanwhile, Sophie and I thrived. We celebrated our family anniversary with cupcakes and matching bracelets. I gave her my father's old fountain pen, and she gave me a clay sculpture of a cat that looked like it had been microwaved. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. At night we read before bed. Sometimes she fell asleep on the couch and I'd carry her to her room, tuck the blanket under her chin, and sit by her bed a while longer, just watching. Just grateful. She never asked about Isla. Never gloated. Never tried to take her place. She simply loved. She simply stayed. A week after the divorce I received an anonymous tip. Vanessa was pregnant. I almost deleted the message. But something told me to read on. Rumor had it she was carrying a boy. A Carter boy. Which meant Isla's position in the family would drop like a stone. I could already see the headlines. Golden daughter replaced by son. Forgotten overnight. I felt no pity. She had climbed on top of me for years. Let her learn how it feels to be at the bottom. It didn't take long. 3 weeks after the divorce I received a late-night call. It was Isla. He was crying. She begged to come home. Said her father ignored her. Vanessa was mean. The new baby got all the attention. That she had no friends. That people looked at her differently now. I want my real mom back, she sobbed. I'm your real daughter. I waited for the anger. Vain. The old maternal reflex. It didn't come. Only silence. Cold and final. No, I said. You made your choice. Isla's voice haunted the silence for hours after that call. Her sobbing, desperate pleas for me to take her back repeated like a broken record in the back of my mind. But unlike the woman I used to be, the one who would have cracked, relented, whispered, I'll come get you, this version of me didn't flinch. Because I had finally learned something critical. Some people only return to you when everyone else walks away. And I was done being the backup plan. A few months passed and I didn't hear a single word from Isla or Michael. But I didn't need to. The world had a funny way of delivering updates. It started with a message from an old acquaintance. Did you hear about Vanessa? I ignored it at first, but then the headlines started coming. Scandal in the Carter household. Pregnant mistress returns to old lifestyle. I read the article with my morning coffee. Apparently, Vanessa had packed up and vanished in the middle of the night, taking what little money she could from Michael and leaving behind their newborn son. The child had fallen ill the next day, left alone in a stuffy room with a fever that went untreated for too long. By the time Michael found him it was too late. The baby survived. But the damage was done. Severe brain injury from prolonged high fever. The heir Michael had pinned all his hopes on was now a child who would need round-the-clock care for the rest of his life. I said nothing. Just closed the article and poured another cup of coffee. Then came the next wave. Michael's mother, who had once screamed at me, called me worthless, accused me of abandoning her precious family, suffered a stroke the day Vanessa ran off. The stress. The embarrassment. The weight of her collapsing legacy. Poetic. Now partially paralyzed, she was stuck in bed, demanding care that no one had the time or energy to give. Michael was left to care for both his disabled child and his half-lucid mother. All while being jobless. Yes, jobless. After the divorce, I pulled all my silent partnerships from Michael's projects. I warned my clients of his behavior. Told them what he'd done, professionally and personally. One by one, doors slammed shut. Investors walked away. Contracts were canceled. Eventually he was let go. Too much bad press. Too much liability. Too little talent to be worth the drama. The last update came from an unexpected place. My personal assistant. She handed me her phone one day and said, "You're going to want to see this." It was a picture. Michael. At a construction site. Wearing a neon vest and hauling bricks. Sweat clung to his temples. His eyes were dull. His posture, once arrogant, was slumped. I stared at the photo for a long moment. Then I nodded. "Delete it." "You don't want to keep it?" she asked, surprised. "No," I said. "The only thing I want from that man is distance." Meanwhile, Sophie had become a star. Not in the Instagram way. Not in the flashy look-at-me bratty rich kid way Isla used to crave. Sophie bloomed in the quiet. She didn't need attention. She just needed a little sunlight. Her love for math became something extraordinary. Every week her teachers would call, amazed by her grasp of concepts far beyond her grade. She began entering local math Olympiads and winning. By the time she was 12, she was competing on a national level. I remember the day she brought home her first big trophy. Her face was red from the effort it took to carry it in her tiny arms. "Look, Mom," she grinned. We did it. I had never cried over a trophy before. But I did that night. Not because I needed her to win, but because she wanted to share it with me. I started traveling again, not for escape like I once did when I needed to run from the Carters, but for life. For joy. Sophie and I toured universities together. She sat in on lectures at MIT, Harvard, Cambridge. I went shopping in Paris while she scribbled equations on napkins at cafes. We laughed over cheap pizza in Rome, strolled through libraries in Tokyo, and stood in stunned silence under the stars in Santorini. Everywhere we went, people asked the same question, "Is she your daughter?" And every time I answered without hesitation, "Yes. She is." Years passed. And while Sophie soared, fell. She never finished school. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she started spending time with the wrong crowd. Older boys, underground parties, lots of anger she didn't know how to place. She got pregnant at 16. No one knew who the father was. Michael beat her when he found out. According to a nurse who used to work in his mother's home, Isla left the baby with them one day, said she needed air, and never came back. Meanwhile, Vanessa resurfaced in the arms of a 60-year-old businessman. Married. Rich. Repulsive. He passed her around like property to impress his colleagues. And she accepted it. Because by then she was too used to the currency of being wanted at any cost. I saw photos. I never said a word. Because I didn't have to. They were living the life they thought I deserved. At 30, Sophie became one of the youngest mathematicians ever awarded the Wolf Prize. She gave her acceptance speech with tears in her eyes and my hand in hers. "I wouldn't be here if someone hadn't given me a second chance at being loved," she said, voice steady but emotional. The crowd stood to applaud. I couldn't see through my tears. After that, I stepped away from the business world entirely. I handed Heart Interiors to a professional CEO. I kept a few shares, enough to stay on the board, but I didn't need the daily grind anymore. I had Sophie. I had time. I had peace. We traveled the world for fun now. She gave guest lectures. I shopped. She earned standing ovations from Nobel laureates. I took photos from the front row like an embarrassing proud mom. And then we'd go home, just the two of us, and cook pasta together in our small but beautiful flat. Then one summer afternoon my assistant called. She sounded hesitant. "Someone came by the office today," she said. Said her name was Isla Carter. I paused, stirring my tea. Did she leave a message? Not exactly. She just kept repeating, "Tell her I came back. Tell her she ruined my life." I set the spoon down gently. She wants to know why I abandoned her. Yes. And why her life is the way it is. Yes. I smiled, soft, sad but free. She already knows the answer, I said. The assistant was silent for a beat. Then, "Do you want to meet her?" I looked out the window. Sophie was on the balcony, sun in her hair, a pen tucked behind her ear as she scribbled equations onto a notepad. She looked so much like peace incarnate I could hardly believe she was real. "No," I said. "There's nothing left to say. Some people say motherhood is forever. I used to believe that. But now I know that love is forever. And love is something that must be returned. Chosen. Fought for. The truth is I didn't abandon Isla. She walked away first. She just never expected me to close the door behind her. The knock on my door came 26 years after I first said the words, "She's hard to love." And as fate would have it, it was the same girl, now a woman, on the other side. But I didn't open the door right away. Instead, I watched from the second-floor window, tea in hand, as the woman paced the porch nervously, looking like she had aged 100 years since our last encounter. Her clothes were worn. Her hair unkempt. Her shoulders hunched as if the weight of the life she'd chosen had finally caught up to her. When I finally opened the door, she froze. We stared at each other. Me, poised, calm, wrapped in a soft shawl, my silver streaks gracefully woven into the rest of my dark hair. Her, wide-eyed, deflated, her lips quivering with things she didn't know how to say. "Hello, Isla," I said. She blinked. "You still remember my name." I didn't flinch. I didn't forget it. I just stopped using it. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. I came to talk. I leaned against the doorway. Talk or blame? Her throat bobbed. "You ruined my life." There was. I waited. "You left me," she said. "You didn't fight for me. You let me stay in that house, with them." You knew what Dad was like. You knew Vanessa hated me. And you left me anyway. Are you here for an apology? I asked gently. I'm here for answers, she snapped. Why didn't you come back for me? Why didn't you try? My smile didn't reach my eyes. You don't want the truth, Isla. You want a version that makes you feel like the victim. I was the victim. No, I said calmly. You were cruel. You were careless. You knew what you were doing when you called me a bad mother. When you stood on stage and thanked Vanessa. When you mocked Sophie and told her she'd never be my daughter. He went still. I remember, I continued. Every word. Every sneer. Every time you pretended I didn't exist, just to please the man who betrayed me. I was a child. So was Sophie. She flinched. But she chose love. You chose power. I didn't know. Yes, you did. Silence stretched between us. A painful, tangled silence filled with the weight of unspoken things. I was angry, she whispered finally. I didn't understand. And now? I asked. I have nothing, she said. No family. No degree. No job. No child. My heart hesitated, but I didn't speak. I'm nobody. I studied her. For a brief second I searched for the child I once rocked to sleep. The baby I bathed, the girl I sang to in the car on long drives. But that child was gone. And I wasn't the woman who waited in doorways anymore. You want something from me, I said softly. She looked up. And this time I saw it. Hope. Pathetic, late, heavy hope. Can I stay for a while? She asked. Just until I get back on my feet. I don't want money. Just a place to sleep. A chance. I closed the door halfway. No, I said. Her eyes widened. What? I don't owe you anything, Isla. You're my mother. No. I was your mother. Her lips trembled. I chose you once. And you broke me for it. I gave you everything. And when I had nothing left, I gave you that too. And you gave me back contempt. I didn't know it would end up like this. No one does, I said. That's why we make choices carefully. Tears filled her eyes now. Real ones. I'm sorry. I'm sure you are, I said. But that's not a key to this door. I have nowhere else to go. That's a consequence. Not my burden. She reached out. I stepped back. Goodbye, Isla. And with that I gently closed the door. No slam. No shouting. Just finality. That evening I told Sophie. We were cooking together. She was stirring her pasta sauce like a chemist measuring compounds. She came back, I said. Sophie looked up. Who? Isla. Her hands paused mid-stir. What did she say? She wanted to stay. She said I ruined her life. Sophie's expression didn't change. Just her eyes, soft, understanding, a little sad. And what did you say? I told her no. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Good, she said. That weekend, Sophie delivered a keynote at a global mathematics summit in Switzerland. She spoke with eloquence, grace, and just the right amount of humor. The crowd loved her. She ended her speech with one line that made my throat close. The greatest equation I ever solved was learning that love isn't inherited. It's chosen. And I was chosen by someone who taught me how to solve life itself. I stood, applauded, cried quietly in the second row. When she stepped down, she ran straight to me. I told them the truth, she whispered. I held her face in my hands. And that's all I've ever wanted for you. Back home the years passed in peace. I grew older. My hair silvered. My steps slowed. But my heart never lost its rhythm. Not once. Because for every day of my life I had Sophie. She took care of me the way I once took care of her. She read to me on tired nights. Painted my toenails in funny colors. Brought me tea on rainy mornings and tucked extra scarves into my coat pocket when she thought I wouldn't notice. She stayed. Always she stayed. One spring morning I sat on the balcony watching her sip her coffee and draft lecture notes for a conference in Tokyo. I think, I said, I'm finally ready. She looked up. For what? To write it all down. She smiled. The story. Our story. She nodded. You should. Because it's not just about loss. Or betrayal. Or pain. No, I agreed. It's about choosing the child who stayed, even when the world tried to throw her away. He reached for my hand. We sat in silence. Not the kind that follows heartbreak, but the kind that blooms after healing. The end.